So it finally happened. I got to sit behind the wheel of a Tesla Model S Plaid. Let's talk about it. Let me tell you, from first sight, the car is beautiful. I mean, you think you know what it looks like with the photos or with videos that you might see online, but let me tell you, once you get around it and you see how they changed certain things, I mean, the car is a completely different car. I remember working inside a Tesla back in 2016 and looking at the Model S, that year model, and man, like thinking they can't do any better than this. They figured it out. The car is amazing. So first things first, let's talk about some of the aesthetics, some of the big deal items. If you can see in the rear, it's like a really big rear haunch now. It's dramatically wider. So much so that when I was looking through the rear view while we were driving, I could see that there was a bigger curvature to the outside body of the car that made it tough a little bit for the rear windows to see out of. But you also can see that maybe they made those a little bit more dramatic to be able to see that. The car, the design of the car has changed a lot when it comes to the chrome. They did a full chrome delete, but not in the traditional sense where you just wrap over it. No, the metal was a completely different color. And you could see as I'm touching the door handle that this is literally the same metal, if not a more anodized or a stronger metal, if you will. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I promise you, the metal itself, you feel it. You know that it's not just a wrapped handle. So that was really cool just to see that visual presentation. Also, the way that they redesigned the seats, oh man, you could feel it. You could see it with the ribbing and with the ventilation holes that they had inside of there. It just really adds to that touch of quality that I think Tesla has been missing for a long time. Just a couple of notes. So I'm going to go down a list of things that I saw that changed from former versions of the Tesla Model S. So just bear with me, okay? So number one is the speakers in the driver's door. You could tell that there are two big speakers now in the door. Just one is actually covered by a fabric you're probably used to covering speakers, but it actually hides it. It looks really nice, but it actually has a form. It has a function to it. So that right there also helps with the audio. So I decided to play a movie while we were in there, and man, the theater quality sound in that thing. Look, I don't think that I've been in a car and heard it that nice before. I don't consider myself an audiophile, but man, I pay attention to small things, and that audio was just so crisp, and it had a boom to it. You had to really be there to feel it, you know? So recommend heavily if you have an opportunity to sit in one and just turn some music up, maybe listen to something like classical. You'll probably feel it really good. The legroom was pretty noticeable as well. And this is something that hadn't changed in the Model S, but with the re-engineered seats that are similar to your Model X, that are similar to your Model Y, Model 3 in the back, it does provide a little bit of legroom. So I was sitting behind the passenger seat that hadn't been moved back, and I felt really comfortable. So I shifted to the seat behind the driver. He's 6'1.5", and the seat, I still had a lot of room, and I'm 6'1" as well. So obviously, once you start to get a little taller, maybe 6'4", and I noticed that he really leans back when he was driving. I feel like he and I probably sit similar, a little bit of a lean, you know, because cool like that. The seat was pretty comfortable from behind. Yeah. The seats, extremely comfortable. The perforation in the back seats is kind of weird because you assume that maybe that same air ventilation that you feel so strong in the front seats is in the back as well, but it ain't. Nah, you just you're just in the back seat of this thing, and yeah, it does heat up. But if there is ventilator built in, they have the seats for it. So that's awesome. Another thing was, so with my Model Y, I remember being on the road and I could hear a lot of road noise. It wasn't so bad because I knew that because the car is silent, I'm hearing a lot more than I would in a typical, engined or ICE vehicle. But in this case, the Model S, the new Plaid, and the X, I'm hoping they have double pane glass. So I know that sound and insulation is top tier, because while we were driving, especially when we were giving the engine a full go, I could barely hear what was happening outside. I felt like we were cocooned in a safe vehicle, and it was doing a good job of preventing a lot of that sound or road noise from coming in. So that's another thing too. The quality of the vehicle is the big deal. They took the small details and really made them good. I'll tell you, I was adjusting the seat, and if you ever adjusted your seat in your car, you always feel those motors kick on. Whether you're sliding back, sliding forward, moving the headrest back and forth, or whatever you're doing with your car, you can feel that initiation of it. You hear it as well. But with the Tesla, it was almost like they had specific people engineer the buttons on the seats, because as I made changes, it wasn't a jerk action. It was just extremely smooth and calculated, almost pressure sensitive. It felt like I was using a video game controller in a weird way. So that's another touch, right? Just that little bit to make it a little bit better. And the quality of the interior of Teslas has always been, not the best. But in this case, I do think that they've taken every bit of detail that they could to try to make this as quality of a product as possible. The quickness of the screen. So even with my Model Y, I remember sliding the screen around and feeling like, wow, that's pretty responsive. But I mean, now we're talking full on 120 hertz or something, because I'm touching the screen and it is reacting extremely quick. And I know that because you have the drive capabilities built into the screen now, that it has to be quick, because you're parking your car or maybe pulling out of a driving spot and you want that to be extremely reactive. Well, they gave that every bit of attention that they possibly could. And to talk about the actual switching of gears, and I'm sure you've seen this in other videos before, but in the bottom, that panel that says, park, rear, drive, full, those buttons that you can, press. The one thing that they've done is they've made sure that you can't just touch that button. You have to physically give it some gusto for that car to actually react to that. So that's a good thing, but also a great feature to have in case something weird is happening with, the software on the screen. And that's always appreciated, especially when you start talking about touch controls. I also got a good look at the air vents. So even when I had the Y, I didn't really pay much attention to how the air was flowing out of the air vents, or how they were physically shaped. So I did a little zoom in just to show you all. That stuff is so cool. They basically have these short grills built into the dash that you can't physically see until you actually get on it. And it is using the back paneling to flow air at you a certain way. And that's engineering. That's just beautiful ingenuity. That definitely took a lot of research and there's function to that form, which is greatly appreciated. The quality of the materials for everything from the vents to the seats to even the little door hooks. So if you didn't know this about my Model Y when I had it, the rear hooks on the door would squeak. So I would drive and I would hear a squeaking noise for a while. And eventually I got Tesla to come out and check it out. And they thought it was a number of things. They thought it was the seats. They thought it was something in the trunk. And eventually they figured out, holy smokes, it's the little hooks that you use for coat hangers. So in this situation, they used a very soft rubber. So if you could think of like a very soft phone case, that's what they've used for those hooks. So when you touch it, it doesn't have a rubbing sensation with the plastic that's next to it. So it's like just the small stuff, right? It's just beautiful. But that doesn't mean that this car is not without its issues though. So a few things that the owner brought up to me was he didn't realize that the 2016 Model S actually had soft closed doors. You could shut that door, and if you didn't shut it all the way, it would close on its own. And if you didn't know this, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, like a lot of top tier car companies, they all do that. Not the Tesla Model S Plaid. No, you got to slam that door, and it's extremely heavy. It's not like a light close. You have to slam that damn thing, and it's not bad. I mean, of course, you want to make sure your door is closed, but I mean, given that it's the the metal and the glass and I personally don't like slamming my doors, but in this case with that Model S Plaid, you got to. So just that little grace that you can't give it, you have to actually give it the gusto. Bluetooth in the rear seats makes sense. Given that screen is right there, and mind you, I don't know if I would really look at that screen given how far it is away when you're looking down. But it does make sense if I'm driving or if I'm being driven somewhere and I'm listening to a movie and maybe the driver doesn't want to hear that because yes, those controls are separate. They can be anyway. Then why would I want to have that noise out? I would want to isolate that sound, and maybe the hardware's there. I don't assume Tesla would put screens in the back with USB-C drivers and physical switches and not have, at the very least, a Bluetooth receiver in the back. So that was something that was a little strange. And then, of course, talking about, as a negative, the visibility on the screen. That thing was it's just kind of strange, right? I mean, maybe for small children that are ankled down that way, but for me, it's just kind of a novelty item. But that's just how I look at it. One thing that I loved about the car, and I could see why maybe it's not the most user friendly thing, but the yoke. You don't realize how big the yoke is until you actually get in the car and you realize, wow, this thing has some girth. And it's actually really, really easy to use, very smooth. And you see it on the screen, actually. You can actually see the wheels turning on the screen. I don't know if I have video of that, but I would love to, you got to see it, right? Where you're actually moving the car and the little digital version of the car is doing exactly what it is. So again, I'm very glad that I got the opportunity to see this car. I'm glad I got to ride in it. And you know what? I'll tell you the coolest thing to me, outside of using the yoke, was the acceleration. Whew, you really feel it, right? So 0 to 60 in a Model Y, it felt like my wife would complain. She would put her head back because she knew it was going to jerk. Well, that car does that from 40 miles an hour to 80 miles an hour. So the feeling that I got when we went from 0 to 80 was almost, it was, if you could think of the craziest roller coaster you've been on, worse. Just, it feels like you shouldn't experience that. It feels like I, on this road, should not have this feeling. And as awesome as that is, that's scary shit, man. Like, just thinking about what it is that we're capable of when we engineer something so cool. And not only that, watching the owner manipulate things on the yoke was actually pretty cool. So now you can't just swipe and it automatically turns on the turn signal, but you actually have to you have to press it. You have to actually, it's haptic, so you feel it, you feel the vibration, but you have to actually click it. So it's not just easy to, you're not turning the steering wheel and then all of a sudden your turn signal's on. So that's a good thing. The other part to it was the horn. Instead of touching the horn button, it would activate very easy, but you could also just cover your hand over it and it would go off as well. And maybe this has something to do with just kind of where your hand lays on the yoke, but and where that button lies, maybe. But it would go off if you grabbed it. So it was almost like driving with a normal steering wheel and hitting the center. If you just hit the side of the steering wheel, or the yoke, if you will, it goes off. So, I mean, just that experience in itself was so cool, and I'm so thankful that I got an opportunity to be behind the wheel of that. And you know what? It helped me make up my mind. I definitely have to get a Model S or an X, and it just is what it is. And I'll probably do that sometime in the spring of next year. So I'll use my reservation for the Model Y, give it to my wife for her, and then I'll probably get an S or an X in the middle of next year, or spring of next year, because it makes sense. Definitely want to thank you all for watching. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Even if you watch 4 seconds of this, thank you so much. Thank you. I'll see you guys on Sunday.